Terrible consequences if the conflict in Ukraine turns into a Russian-American nuclear war. The war in Ukraine has been harsh. Experts hope this conflict will not spread to other countries or worse, become into the Third World War. In a speech, U.S. President Joe Biden declared the U.S. has no intention of going to war with Russia, but also affirmed that the U.S. and its allies will defend every inch of NATO. Meanwhile, when asked whether Russia's military doctrine allows the use of tactical nuclear weapons, Mr. Medvedev replied that Moscow's nuclear stance has been made public. There are 4 reasons for using nuclear weapons. These include launching nuclear missiles, using nuclear weapons, attacking critical nuclear weapons control infrastructure, or other actions that threaten the existence of the Russian state, he said. Medvedev said, adding that so far none of the above-mentioned cases have occurred. Observers told Insider that nuclear war is an unlikely event but not an unrealistic threat. I hope this war will not escalate, and I think there are positive signs that that won't happen, but the involvement of nuclear states in conflict is an existential risk, Tara Drozdenko, director of the Global Security Program of the Union of Scientists, commented to Insider. Ukraine does not have nuclear weapons, so the risk of nuclear war in this scenario is that somehow the conflict escalates, drawing NATO countries or the US into the war. That raises the risk of nuclear confrontation because some NATO countries possess nuclear weapons. The US has about 5,500 nuclear warheads while Russia's number is 6,000, the Association of American Scientists said. According to Ms. Drozdenko, US nuclear weapons have an explosive yield of about 300 kilotons of TNT while Russian nuclear weapons have an explosive yield of 50 to 100 kilotons to 500 to 800 kilotons. Modern weapons are 20 to 30 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If Russia and America fire everything they own, it could be the end of this civilization, observed observer Drozdenko. The terrible consequences of nuclear war. Just one nuclear explosion could easily wipe out an entire city, said Catherine Higley, a professor of nuclear science at Oregon State University. It is difficult to say that this city will survive and that city will not. This depends mainly on the scale of the weapons, the terrain, where they were activated, and the direction of the wind. When a nuclear bomb is detonated, it creates a flash of light, forming a giant orange fireball and creating a shock wave that can topple buildings. People in the center of the explosion, within approximately 1 kilometer of a 300 kiloton bomb, will likely die instantly while those in the surrounding area may suffer third-degree burns. A nuclear explosion multiplying 1,000 kilotons could extend the range of people with third-degree burns by 8 kilometers, extend the range of people with second-degree burns by 10 kilometers, and extend the range of people with first-degree burns by 6 kilometers, according to estimates. Of ASAP Science said. People at a distance of 85 kilometers can be temporarily blinded. You could say you were in a city far enough away from the center of the blast to not suffer the deadly effects of radiation, but there's a good chance you'd still be injured by a falling building or suffer mostly third-degree burns. Body. There will not be enough hospital beds in the US to deal with a nuclear attack even if it only targets one city, commented expert Drozdenko. Nuclear explosions can also create clouds of dust and sand like radioactive particles dispersed in the air, also known as fallout clouds. Exposure to them will lead to radiation poisoning, destroying cells in the body and causing death. Radioactive clouds can block sunlight, causing temperatures to plummet and shortening the growth time of important crops. Expert Drozdenko believes that crop decline will last for decades and cause famine in some places. If a nuclear weapon with a yield of 300 kilotons were to attack a city the size of the U.S. capital Washington, many people would not be able to survive and those nearby would be seriously injured. The deadly amount of radiation will cover most of the city and could spread to Virginia, expert Drozdenko said. Ms. Drozdenko estimated that a nuclear explosion could kill 300,000 people in Washington and injure many others. If the number of nuclear weapons used increases, the death toll could reach millions, depending on how many bombs are dropped and the extent of the explosions. The larger the weapon, the larger the radius will be. The level of radioactive fallout from a nuclear bomb also depends on how it is detonated. If this nuclear weapon is detonated above ground, the explosion will create radioactive dust and other materials other dispersed in the air. If a nuclear weapon is detonated in mid-air, the shock wave will reach the ground and be further amplified, leading to destruction on a larger scale. The mid-air explosion also released radioactive materials 50 miles into the air, the Environmental Protection Agency said. Countries often rely on models and weapons tests to predict the impact, but it is difficult to know how a modern nuclear explosion would play out in reality. This has no precedent in history. The only nuclear weapons ever used were in World War II, Drozdenko commented.